CFL 110, your weekly trip around the biggest stories in the Canadian Football League with Jeff Hamilton and Andrew Hustler Paterson. Presented by Garage Living Winnipeg.
What is going on, CFL fans? Welcome to our Week 1 edition of CFL 110 here on the Winnipeg Sports Talk channel. I'm Andrew Paterson, soon to be joined by our pal Jeff Hamilton. If you missed week number 1's show, that's a big season preview. One big question on every team in the Canadian Football League heading into this week's kickoff. You can check that out anytime on podcast or by going on YouTube to CFL 110 and check out last week's program. Today, though, we're going to hit the notable cuts and surprises after training camp cutdowns on the weekend. And, of course, look ahead to the 4 matchups this week in the CFL. Of course, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers not playing this week. Their home opener next June 12th, next Thursday night. And, of course, Zach Caleros will not play in that game due to the offseason suspension. Chris Streveler tabbed to be the Week 2 starter, first game of the season for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. But as we, of course, love to get in with our weekly picks, and we will be making our weekly picks against the spread all season long with our lines from our pals over at CoolBet. We're going to take a little bit more time today to dive into the futures with our thoughts on the odds for the winning the Grey Cup, the MOP, as well as a couple of our favorite win totals and player props for the season that are available right now at CoolBet. But we will get going with our top topics coming out of the weekend and the final cutdown day. And it's a pleasure to welcome in Jeff Hamilton. And today we can introduce him as award-winning Jeff Hamilton, because while it wasn't really your time on the Bombers in the CFL beat, big congratulations are in order to you and Katrina for that huge win you had on the weekend for the National Journalism Award. So before we get back to the toy department, well done. It's a very important work, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you so much. Obviously, it was an incredible honor, an incredible surprise. I went out to Calgary this past weekend for the Canadian Association of Journalists Conference. I was nominated, as you mentioned, Haas, with my partner in the series, Katrina Clark, for our childcare series we did last year. We won our written news investigation category, beat out some pretty big hitters in the Globe and Mail and Toronto Star, and then to my major surprise, at the end of the evening, they brought this big trophy out, this big glass trophy, and they announced the Don McGilvery Award winner, and that was for the winner of all the winners, and we won that one. So we were kind of the project of the year, if you will. So super humbled and honored for the opportunity and the recognition, but certainly just makes me eager to do more important work. But as you mentioned, we're back in the toy department. We're talking about a crazy CFL upcoming season here, and I couldn't be more excited to chop it up with you on our second season.
Now, for Bomber fans, they got to wait an extra week, but for the other 8 teams, it is go time this weekend, and you can't start the season without getting to the roster limits. So let's start off with the first topic of some of the players and names that were cuts. I'll be honest, I did a double take and needed to see and make sure that I wasn't getting got by somebody having a little fun when I saw that Carey was cut by the Toronto Argonauts. But, yeah. I mean, they also let go of Cameron Dukes, who's been a big part of their team for the last couple of years. Walter Fletcher, what a great productive season. I mean, 1,400 total yards for the Alouettes. He's cut. Alexander Hollins in Edmonton. Deontay Evans as well. I mean, Jeff, just give us a quick rundown of, the players that we've just named, anyone else that you think might have been sort of surprisingly left, and where these players stand right now as everyone goes in at least into week 1 with what they think gives them the best chance to win under the cap.
Yeah, Huss, I look at maybe 3 notable. I don't even know if I would call them surprising. Obviously, Carey, running back, East Division All-Star last year, eclipsed 1,000 yards rushing. We all know how important that mark is. But It's the Toronto Argonauts. This is a team that met almost their entire roster this offseason with like renegotiated deals, right? This is what they're known for. They take the younger player. They're cutthroat. They're ruthless, if you will. They're a lot more ruthless when it comes to the roster than any other team in the CFL, and you can argue that it's worked for them. Look at the success they had. This is a team that's coming off the Grey Cup. This is a team that won the Grey Cup with Nick Arbuckle as their QB1. And the reason I bring that up is because Ryan Dinwiddie, in my opinion, is the smartest coach in the CFL, and I just don't question his decision-making. And I'll revisit a moment in last year, Huss, Rasheed Bailey. Rasheed Bailey was lighting it up, if you will, in his first 6 games with the Argos last year, was first in yards, tied for second in touchdowns, and was cut. And when I happened to be in Toronto, I broke that news on the train on my way there to the practice. And when I talked to Dinwiddie about it, he was as straight up as you get. We like another guy. We like a younger guy, Mackay Polk. Anyone know who that guy is? He was a 1,000-yard receiver last year and an all-star in the East Division. So I'm not overly surprised. Obviously, Kadeem Carey is a running back. We're not talking about receivers here, but it's the same situation. They like who they have, particularly in Mayan Williams behind him. This guy is 23 years old, Huss. And again, the age is a big deal here. Polk was 22 last year. Kadeem Carey is 32 years old. To me, that's the thing that kind of just adds up. Unfortunate, maybe, Kadeem Carey is going to get another spot, but better to get rid of a running back, 1 year ahead of time than 1 year too late. And take that from Wally Buono. The other one, though, Huss, Alexander Hollins, to me, also not a huge surprise. This guy's been banged up the last little bit. He got banged up again in training camp, talking about maybe something again with his knee, the same knee that he got arthroscopic surgery on this offseason, and got a $75,000 signing bonus returned to him because of it from the BC Lions. I just don't find this one a big surprise. I do find it a surprise to a certain degree because of who they have behind them. This is not a receiver group that is riddled with veterans, right? They have Stephen Dunbar Jr., which is essentially their guy for American number one. So you thought that Hollins would be a good complementary with Curly Gittins and their other receivers. But Alexander Hollins also has a bit of, in my opinion, what you watch on TV, some attitude issues, right? Who knows what occurred from the start of training camp with a new team. And Ed Hervey, he doesn't want to pay a receiver top dollar, especially an injured one, any more money than he has to. So I don't see that one as a surprise. I see Walter Fletcher, to be honest with you, though, Huss, is like probably my biggest surprise of all three of them, just because of his versatility. I really liked, his ability to be able to mix it up through the air and on the ground. More than 700 yards rushing, just under 700 yards receiving last year. And so I think of all those three, Fletcher's the most likely, in my opinion, to get another job in the CFL. Any surprise for you of those three or any other group?
Well, the Fletcher to me was wild in that, you just laid out the numbers. I mean, this guy was as productive through the air almost than he was carrying the rock, and he did it consistently throughout the year. I think he was in 17 of 18 games for the Alouettes last year, and that's a team that I thought really took a step ahead offensively, and having an outlet like that for a young quarterback like Davis Alexander, I think is, really important. Now, listen, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I've been, watching and getting training camp reports from Montreal each and every year. I got a lot of confidence with Moss and that staff there. And to be honest, it sounds like we're in a very similar situation that you just mentioned with Dinwiddie. I mean, Father Time is undefeated. No place more than professional football. And listen, if there's a younger, cheaper guy that can come in and you think deliver similar production, sometimes that's the way that it happens. So as far as names go, Kadeem Carey. But you get and to be honest, you think, oh wow, he's 31, he's 32 years old. Sometimes you just, if you're casually looking at it, you don't think about it. But for me, both of those running backs, because of the importance of the position, was a bit of a surprise. Let me ask you this, because we've talked a lot here in Winnipeg about Dylan Mitchell's situation. any players that didn't get cut that you were kind of waiting to see whether they would be on that roster, ones that had some significant CFL experience and tenure?
Well, let's start with the guy you just mentioned, Dylan Mitchell in Winnipeg. I mean, this is a guy that the Bombers made a pretty big deal about. They flew him in, signed him, got him to do the media tour, showed him around Winnipeg, and it all seemed like the perfect marriage. He said all the right things, eager to come to a championship caliber team. We often hear players who make it to Winnipeg talk about the legacy here in Winnipeg and how they've heard great things, and the accountability is often brought up, and how players keep each other accountable. And then training camp comes and just not getting it done. And I imagine because he hasn't played with the first team offense all training camp, Huss, I would argue that tells you that he didn't show up to camp in shape. And if you wonder if that was questioned, well, I'm not saying he said he was out of shape, but he did talk to my colleague Joshua Frey-Sam at the Winnipeg Free Press for a story and did admit that he didn't bring his best. And so, I mean, the fact that hasn't played with the first team offense, coupled with the fact that he, all that attention that he garnered early on, suggests to me that he wouldn't even be on the roster if they hadn't done that. And this is a little bit of, a combination of one, saving face, not wanting to look foolish in your off-season business, and two, they didn't find a guy that they thought was better than him. And I bring up that second point, Huss, because Mike O'Shea is not a guy who likes players that don't come ready for training camp. We saw the relationship with Andrew Harris and him. Andrew Harris, a long-term veteran and hometown hero, he didn't get a free pass. Certainly Dylan Mitchell's not getting a free pass. But moving on from him, he sticks with the team. We'll see what he can do. Hopefully he can put this all behind him, but that is not a good start here in Winnipeg. The other one, Huss, is Mario Alford, the returner in Saskatchewan. And as the theme seems to be going younger, that seems to be the situation here in Saskatchewan. They really, really, really like a guy named Dre McRae. And if you watched any of the preseason, you would really like him too, because he was doing a lot and often. And again, this guy is significantly younger. He is 22 years old, and Mario Alford is 34 years old. And as we know, as you mentioned, Huss, Father Time is undefeated. And once you start creeping into your 30s, it's a week-to-week endeavor. So we'll see what happens there. He got the same treatment, I would call veteran treatment, Mario Alford, that is, and he's sticking around, but he's certainly a guy to keep an eye on, because that McRae guy was doing a lot of damage, and I think by the end of the season he could very well be creating some highlight reels on the special team side of things. Yeah,
for me the Mitchell saga was really interesting, and I think it caught myself and most people off guard when all of a sudden you're hearing these reports and Dylan Mitchell isn't out with the ones. I mean, they flew him in here, they gave him a signing bonus, and to be honest, that might have been his saving grace, Jeff. The optics of flying a guy in, paying a bunch of money, and not even having him see the field, excuse me, I think would have been something that, he probably got a little bit longer rope, frankly, than a lot of other players would have, because of what they've already invested in him. So when he sees the field, he's going to need to step up, because the plan was not to sign him in the fashion they did and have him be a backup.
Absolutely not. And I think that, to your point, I think you're bang on. I do think that that money talks in this situation. And certainly you don't want to be handing over free money in the offseason, not seeing what he has to offer. And I'll say this, Dylan Mitchell, when you look at what he was able to achieve on a let's call it a lowly Edmonton Elks team last year, I think you do look at a potentially bright future. And so I still think there's that hope that things can turn around and that he can kind of figure it out here. That's the thing, Huss, about the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. It's FIFO for a reason, fit in or F off. And if you're not bringing your A game, if you're not bringing that level or you're not meeting those high expectations from a team that's made the Grey Cup the last 5 years, you're not going to be around for much longer.
All right. So now, normally, if you've seen the show beforehand, normally we're going to really be diving in to the big stories each and every year coming out of, off the field, around the Canadian Football League. Today's show, a little different. We kind of did the season preview for all the teams. We're going to dive into these first 4 games with every game or every week this year. We'll be making our favorite picks against the spread with the lines from CoolBet. And then I think probably put together maybe a little CFL 110 parlay that the boys can boost and stick up into the exclusives. But today we're going to hit these games right now, and then we're going to take a look, big picture in the futures, and maybe get in on some shrewd MOP bets and a few more in a minute. But let's start off, Jeff, with these first 4 games of the year. I'll mention the spread. If we want to pick them while we're doing it, we can do that, and then just focus on the futures afters, or if we want to wait for the picks until the end. But we started off with Ottawa at Saskatchewan, and I think both of these teams coming off steps forward last year, but still, with another step or two to take if they want to get to where they plan to be. And you know what? It's a second-year theme here as well. A second-year head coach in Corey Mace that did some really positive things with Saskatchewan, I thought, in his first year, despite that long stretch without a win in the middle of the season. And then we've got a quarterback in his second year as a starter looking to build on that in Drew Brown. This one opened at 2.5 for Saskatchewan. It's at 3 right now. But just thoughts on this matchup. Sask at home, and Bobby Dice's REDBLACKS, who had that great start to the season at 8-3-1, but sort of faded down the stretch, looking to get off to a good start in a place that traditionally has been a tough place to play.
Huss, I look at these 2 teams, and they're both prime examples, and it's great that they're on opposite divisions, because they're 2 teams that have super high expectations this year after making a ton of progress last season. And you look at Saskatchewan, obviously the Craig Dickinson era didn't work. You bring in Corey Mace. There's going to be growing pains as a new head coach. And there certainly was. The Saskatchewan Roughriders got out to, ahead of the pack early, but then had one of their, infamous losing streaks and lasted another 7 games. They couldn't win. And some of those issues in those losses were the head coaching decisions of Corey Mace. They were able to figure it out. They were able to get to second place in the division, and unfortunately ran into obviously Winnipeg in the West Final, and their season was over. This now needs to be built on that. Corey Mace is now a second-year head coach. He is a year smarter. He's fine-tuned his team. He's added some players. He's gotten rid of some players. The big issue here, Haas, is the decimation to their offensive line. And that is really, really, really tough. Sean McEwen, Philip Gagnon, 2 guys that were brought in to bring protection for Trevor Harris, to help him out. They're not going to be playing for the rest of the season. And that was kind of the movie played over last season. So not a great start. That's the only knock against them. And then I look over to Ottawa here, Huss, and I really, really like Ottawa. I think people are sleeping on them. I've been known as the guy year in and year out. Last year was the first year I said, look, they're going to make the playoffs this year. I really like what Drew Brown brought. Before that, I was very critical. Everyone was super high on the Ottawa REDBLACKS because they were really splashy in the offseason, and then they would putter out and didn't make it. This year, I think they're the real deal, and this year, I think people are underestimating them. To that second-year theme, Drew Brown is legit. And you know what? He was in a very, very different situation in year 1 than he is here in year 2. And why I say that is because when he arrived in the nation's capital last year, yes, he was given QB1 money, lower end QB1 money, and ultimately a little bit of a rope. There was no promise you were going to be here for the whole season. And it was a really, really busy quarterback room. Jeremiah Masoli was in there. Dustin Crum was in there. Other guys who had started games filled that room. This year, he has more breathing room. He has proven it. He signed an extension. So the confidence is there. I like the offense. I like the weapons they put around him. Eugene Lewis is arguably one of the best, if not the best receiver in the league. He finished up the season last year, I think, with a touchdown in each one of his last 7 games. He will bring a lot to that team. Khalil Pimpleton has the potential to have a massively big season this year. We saw what he was able to do last year. He's small, he's fast, he stretches the field. We all know Drew Brown loves to throw the ball. So in this situation, I'm not going to, I don't know if we want to make our picks right now, but when it comes to Ottawa, I really like this team. I think they're rising. Both teams are rising. And it'll be interesting because obviously both teams can't win. And it is week 1. And I will say this, week 1 is very, very hard to predict, particularly in the CFL. So, but I do see two exciting teams and 2 teams that should be in and around things at the end of the year, kicking it off.
Yeah, I actually am sort of with you, and I think just speaking
that's bad radio, man. We can't agree with each other.
Wait, just thinking about Pimpleton, that there's a lot of people liking him to have a big year. I think the addition of Geno Lewis is massive, especially for Drew Brown to have an established star receiver like that, but also to open up over the middle a little bit more for Pimpleton, who, I mean, Tommy Condell now moving there. You think about the last time Tommy Condell had a little joystick guy like that, I believe it was Brandon Banks, and I'm pretty sure he won the MOP that year. So yep. I understand why people are high. We'll take a look at what his number is, to potentially be that guy right now. To me, Saskatchewan, I'm with you. Listen, you have to be concerned with that offensive line. And there is nothing that can sink an offense faster than a couple injuries of guys that might not be household names, but get the job done regularly offensive line. And by all accounts, they've had some big-time issues for injuries when we get through the camp. But I'll be honest, I do have confidence that Corey Mace and his team is going to be able to move it forward. And to be honest, I'm a big believer in Trevor Harris. I know they brought in Jake Mayer. Listen, Iwanek made the argument on the Lock Shop earlier today that Jake Mayer played his best football when he was a backup. Listen, I think that if Jake Mayer is in for the Saskatchewan Roughriders at any point this season, that's bad news for Sask. But I do believe that Trevor Harris is capable of, if he can stay healthy for 18 games, being a guy that's in the mix for the MOP and have his team contending for winning the division, the bye, and having the road to Princess Auto Stadium go through Mosaic first. So, 2 teams that I think have pretty bright futures right now. And as I said, one of them, all of that optimism, will be out the door in 60 minutes when they lose week 1, and then
fan base will be right on fire, Huss.
Have to run about it.
Before we move on to the next game, though, Huss, one massively disrespectful move by us. Justin Hardy is also on that team, and he had over 1,300 receiving yards and 90 catches last year, and that is up there as one of the better groups. And Drew Brown, we know how much he loves throwing that ball, man. That's going to be an exciting year in Ottawa.
Well, that's why Drew Brown's number for his passing total is as high as it is over on Coolbet, which we'll touch on in a minute. Moving on, this to me is the game of the week. I mean, at least if we're talking about teams, and listen, we always make this mistake. We think of teams the way they finished last year and everything is different. The Argos are incredibly different this year. I mean, well, it's half their defense, much of it that's gone to Edmonton to play for the Elks right now. Chad Kelly hasn't thrown a pass since he got injured in that horrible playoff mishap last year. And then you've got the Montreal Alouettes that are reloading with some new players under Davis Alexander. I'll be honest, when I first saw this, I was a little surprised that the line was 4 for Montreal in this game. I've actually seen it as high as 4.5 in some other spots. Coolbet has it at 4, which is nice because I think I'm leaning Montreal in this one. I'm with you. I've got a lot of confidence in Ryan Dinwiddie to figure it out. And by the time we're talking about week 15, 16, 17, looking ahead for the playoffs, the Argos will be there and be a problem. But coming out of the gate in week 1, I'll be honest, I'm really high on Davis Alexander and this Alouette team. They know what they have in this young man. They've got a great backup in MBT behind him. I'm high on the Alouettes early on, although I do expect the Argos to be here later. Where are you at on both of these teams as they begin their journey?
I'm not surprised by that spread, to be honest with you. And I'd argue that it's probably not big enough. And the reason I bring that up, Huss, is that Chad Kelly is still not started throwing passes this week. I mean, I'm not sure about the practice report today, but as of yesterday, he wasn't throwing passes. I don't know if he was just cleared to really participate, to throw, be in the first team offense this week. So
can they throw him out there that quickly?
I don't think so. Like, I honestly, and against the same team he got injured against, right? So it's like, I'm not saying, and it's on the road. So it's just, I feel like there's too many things at play here, too many factors. And when you look at how important Chad Kelly is to this team, I'd probably want to give him a little more time to work with the offense, a little more time to take contact, and just to feel comfortable that way. So, I mean, that's going to determine, in my opinion, really the only chance that Toronto has. And I mentioned, I really think that Ryan Dinwiddie is an impressive coach and an incredibly intelligent coach. So is Jason Moss. So I really like Jason Moss and what he's done in Montreal and the culture that he's brought to the team. They're at home. They have David, it's the Davis Alexander era. And if things don't work out, they got McLeod Bethel Thompson if he goes down or whatever. And we talked about receivers before, Huss, with Ottawa. Austin Mack, Tyson Philpott. Those might be two of the best receivers in the league up there with the Eugene Lewises and the Kenny Lawlers of the CFL. So I really like this team. And the other thing, too, about Davis Alexander last year, yeah, he went 4-0. You could probably say he went 5-0 because he came in and won another game for the team. They just don't count quarterback wins that way. Is that, they didn't really matter who they had at quarterback last year. Their defense was that good. Their special teams was that sound. And I'm expecting a lot of the same from Montreal. And so, that was a tough end of the season. Jason Moss has a very short memory. He will want to, exact revenge here in week 1. And for those reasons, I think that's exactly why you have Montreal favored by more than a field goal here.
Ooh, I think Montreal might be ending up on our first week CFL 110 parlay over at Coolbet. I've got a feeling. Hamilton, Calgary. This is a pick'em right now. VA in Calgary. New Dave Dickinson still at the helm, and then Levi Mitchell coming off that incredible individual season. Now we get some help with Kenny Lawler coming in. Pick them -110 on either side,
which is kind of surprising to me. What is it? I don't know exactly what that line says, Huss. Do they think that the Calgary Stampeders, who have lost twice as many games as they've won the last 2 seasons combined, have gotten better, or are they assuming that the Hamilton Tiger Cats, who made a push at the end of last year, just maybe aren't as good as some have suggested this offseason? Because there's been a lot of hype for the Ticats. Obviously, as you mentioned, the addition of Kenny Lawler to an offense that had, was led by Levi Mitchell, who had a roller coaster of a season last year, right? Came in, was the number 1 guy, replaced, partway through the season, injury got him back, and then he was up for East Division most outstanding player, right? So won East Division most outstanding player, but obviously fell to Brady Oliveira in the West. To me, I think there's a lot of question marks in Calgary, a lot of moving pieces from a coaching staff perspective, right? Dave Dickinson ultimately was forced to release his entire staff, promoted his brother, as one of his assistants, and brought in, a lot of new guys. And that includes the locker room. You have Vernon Adams, as you mentioned. That's an exciting development for the Stampeders because we've seen what VA has done over the last few years. He's been a perennial candidate for the most outstanding player, so he should certainly bring some better skill set than Jake Mayer did to the offense here. And as I mentioned last week, Huss, you gotta hope that Vernon Adams also brought some culture to the locker room, because that was the biggest thing here. Whereas, it was all about, there was such a division between the younger guys and the older guys in Cowtown. Whereas in Hamilton, things weren't going well, but the camaraderie was still there. And especially this season, there seems to be a lot of excitement. I'm not saying there isn't change in Hamilton either. That's probably why you're looking at a pick'em here, but I just have a way stronger feeling for Hamilton than Calgary this year.
Yeah, listen, I'm actually, I think, higher on Calgary than a lot of others are, and we can talk about that in a minute when we kind of get to the season-wide discussion.
Spoiler, me too.
I do think it's going to take a little while. And listen, they have like getting Vernon Adams in there cannot be overstated how important that is, both on the field, in the locker room, in the huddle. And I think that's why I'm optimistic about Calgary moving forward. But I do think that, when you think about the way that Hamilton started last year, their entire focus, I'm sure, in training camp is being ready to go out and win a football game in Calgary this weekend. I think they've got a good chance of doing that. And, I think back to the start of last year. I mean, there was that one game where Tim White, of all people, couldn't catch anything. I mean, they were dropping footballs. And, I mean, Bo Levi, like, if his receivers had been more reliable early in the season, you wonder what those numbers would have been, and maybe they make the playoffs, maybe he ends up with the MOP. That wasn't the case, but that was going to be their focus right away. And I think I am leaning Hamilton as well in week number 1. But I hesitate for the people that are writing Calgary off before we even get going. Bringing in a big-time quarterback like that, lifting everybody else up, I think we can see it. Now, let's just quickly hit this final game. Edmonton at BC. This game, this is 5.5-point favorites for BC. You've got 2 head coaching debuts. Buck Pierce in BC before he comes to Winnipeg as a visitor in week 2. And Mark Killam, who's moved up the highway in Alberta from Calgary, where he'd been a longtime coach, now to Edmonton, and a battle of 2 Canadian quarterbacks. Great way for that late night game on Saturday to get things going for the Canadian Football League. Where are you at on these teams, and your thoughts on both of them as they embark on the season?
Now, we could probably say this for all 4 matchups, but I'm just focusing in on the quarterbacks because both of them, for very different reasons, bring both some excitement and some question marks, if you will. And let's look over at BC first. Nathan Rourke. I mean, the BC Lions, in my opinion, I'm not trying to tease it, might be 9th in the league if it isn't for Nathan Rourke. I don't love their defense. Their offense, they have a good O-line to a certain degree to protect Nathan Rourke and give him the time, but I don't, I'm not feeling great about the receiver group. And so when you look at all those things, there's a lot of pressure on Nathan Rourke. Now, do I believe Nathan Rourke can get back to the 2022 Nathan Rourke that lit the league on fire? Absolutely. I do believe that. I believe that him coming in last season from his stints in the NFL threw off his rhythm, had to go into a team, obviously, in a BC Lions that he knew well, but didn't really know at all as far as that year's addition. Became a little bit of not a little bit, there was clear division between, and I don't want to say between Adams and Nathan Rourke, they were fine, but the teammates felt like the Lions were doing Vernon Adams dirty in what was in the midst of an MOP caliber type season before Rourke showed up. So taking all that stuff away, coming to a camp, being your team, being able to be vocal and be a leader right at the beginning will make a big difference, I believe. We all know how much Nathan Rourke puts into his craft, so I'm expecting, a big week out of him. At least, we saw some good things in preseason, so that's certainly bodes well for my prediction. But we'll see. Flipping over to the Edmonton side, it's Trey Ford, man. Trey Ford. The Canadian has finally gained his opportunity to lead a CFL team right out of the gate. I don't know what to expect. You know how I feel. I really hope I'm wrong in this, Huss. I'm not, I am. I do like Trey Ford. I hope he does super well. I just go back to my comments I made last week, and that was a lack of confidence in the huddle and where he is now with that, how comfortable he feels with an offense, how comfortable he feels with the pressure on his shoulders as the undisputed number 1. He's never really been like that, right? He's always kind of come in when the season hasn't really mattered, and he's been able to do some of his use some of his athletic gifts to extend plays and put some points on the board. But this is now for real. Every game matters. You're the guy in the spotlight. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing what Trey Ford can do and what the rest of that team can do, because we've seen in the past, as I mentioned earlier, one of the first segments, Huss, about how I was kind of dogged the REDBLACKS for a couple seasons. I'm not saying it's the same situation in Edmonton. However, when you do dip into free agency as deep as the Edmonton Elks did this offseason, you all of a sudden have some issues potentially with culture, potentially with roles, and certainly with chemistry. So I'm wondering how much they were able to smooth any of those wrinkles over in during training camp. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what Edmonton has in store after some horrible seasons and a lot of change over there in Edmonton.
All right, so there you have the week one. We'll come back and we'll just hit our picks against the spread. I want to get Remus's thoughts on those games as well, and we'll put something together that we can get up into the combo cards. And we'll normally doing that on a weekly basis, but with it being the eve of kickoff, we have until Thursday night to get in our favorite plays of the year over at Coolbet in the futures section. I always love spending time on this before the season. Let's start off with Grey Cup odds, Jeff. Argos, the favorite at plus 325. Winnipeg and Montreal at 5-1. Saskatchewan 6-1. Ottawa plus 750. BC plus 850. Hamilton plus 1250. Edmonton 14-1. And the Calgary Stampeders 25-1, which is the biggest number we've seen since 2 years ago when we went into the year with the Montreal Alouettes at 19-1, the longest shot on the board, and they ended up winning the Grey Cup. I mean, listen, a bet only cashes if the team wins. I think we all agree there's some teams that we think are contenders right now as we go into the season, some others that it might be next year territory to at least win the Grey Cup. But when you look at those numbers, I mean, it says the Argos are the team to beat. We've just talked about that offseason. I think I'll remain in let's see territory. To me, the Alouettes at 5-1 are maybe of the favorites, the number that I like the best. Listen, I've got a lot of confidence in the Bombers. I think they'll be right there. But to me, the West is so wide open that looking at that Montreal squad, with the weapons that they have, with the depth they have at quarterback, which is so key if you do get an injury to the starter. To me, I kind of feel like Montreal is the team to beat, and that's why I think my best bet for the Grey Cup would be Montreal right now at 5-1.
Okay, well, Haas, when it comes to best bets, there is no such thing as shifting. You want to take the team that you think is going to win, and I'm with you all the way. I'm with you. I have Montreal as my best bet to win the Grey Cup this year for similar reasons as you mentioned. I think the East is wide open. I will say this, Haas. I mean, maybe it's better to say it ahead of power rankings or whatever, but this is the most parity I've seen in the league for a long time. The difference between 1 and 9 is a lot closer than what we've seen in previous years. For someone who's covered this league the last 10 years and closely, this is setting out to be a very competitive team. And the reason why I have Montreal Alouettes at the top spot is kind of the exact reasons I talked about them in the last segment. I like Jason Moss. It didn't seem to matter who was at quarterback, and I do like Davis Alexander, but they have McLeod Bethel Thompson as a plan B, and we know that he can put up yards and points in this league, and they have a good defense and they have good special teams. It's as simple as that. I was going to say before the injuries to the O-line, I was going to pick the Saskatchewan Roughriders, but because of those O-line injuries, that's too important of a position for me to have confidence in them. It's sound. We'll see what happens. You got to play the games, obviously, but when you're that banged up on the O-line and you're bringing in new guys to work as a unit, anyone who doesn't understand how important it is to be on the same page with your O-lineman. It's not just lining up 5 guys and just playing your heart out on the field. It's having the footwork. You need to be in tune. So that to me is too much. I have the Montreal Alouettes as the best bet. I'm going to move into best value though, Huss, because my best value, and of course, and again, I'm not saying that I feel like this team is going to win the Grey Cup, but this to me, when you look at the rankings, this is where I see the best value, and it's with the Hamilton Tiger Cats.
I knew you were going to say that.
It's the Hamilton Tiger Cats because big question marks on defense, but questions eventually get answers. And if this defense can play as well as this offense is expected to play, this could be a very good team. And I say that, I'll add to this, Haas, is that if that offense can stay on the field and give their defense a break, I think that is the key to success for Hamilton. What was their odds you had them at? Plus
1250.
Yeah, I have them 1252. I just wanted to make sure we had the right ones. I think that is a good bet because, as my last point for that, Huss, is the East to me. While I do think there's some quality teams in it, injuries at play, all these different things, I just think the Hamilton Tiger Cats, if they can get in the right position, there's a lot of pressure on them. And I'll add this as a final note. This is the team with the longest current Grey Cup drought. And while it wouldn't be at quite poetic, that, because it was the Bombers who beat Hamilton, but it was in Calgary, only to beat Hamilton in Hamilton to go back to back. How nice would it be for the Hamilton Tiger Cats to return the favor, whether it's against the Bombers or not, but on home field in Winnipeg? So great story, decent odds, pretty good team. All of those to me has the best value as the Hamilton.
Crazier things have happened, and I'm with you. I mean, I think this offense is going to be really good.
Are you Hamilton too?
I think it'll be. Oh yeah,
yeah. They to me, but are they is there a more obvious pick than them? Everybody else is kind of fair value. And I'm sorry to cut you off, Huss, and give your opportunity to make your why. But I think that was the obvious one.
For sure. I mean, listen, I'm out on Edmonton, and as high as I am on Calgary, I mean, the number is crazy at 25-1, but I think this is going to be a work in progress over a couple seasons if they're truly going to contend.
Totally.
I mean, I think you could make an argument for Ottawa in the same vein as Hamilton, but again, you're almost getting 5-1 more when it comes to the Ticats as opposed to the REDBLACKS right now. And we'll get to this, but
Ottawa would be a savvy pick. But the best value would be Hamilton.
And I'm not on BC. And I do think that, once again, we're going to probably see either Winnipeg or Saskatchewan in the Grey Cup. And obviously, they've got shorter numbers to make it. Okay, this is probably the most interesting conversation to have. And the odds for the MOP. Now, Chad Kelly, being the quarterback of the number 1 ranked team, gets the nod as the odds-on favorite at plus 425. We just talked about his situation going into the season. And I will mention this. I would not bet on Chad Kelly anyways, but if it comes down to a situation where it's a very, very close vote, I will just say this. I don't think Chad Kelly is going to be the guy that's getting the benefit of the doubt. When you would normally think that for a guy that has done what he's done so far in the Canadian Football League. Nathan Rourke is number 2 at 7-1. You've got a group of quarterbacks then. Zach Caleros, Davis Alexander, Drew Brown, 10-1. Brady Oliveira, the first non-QB on the board, 11-1. Trevor Harris, 11-1. Levi Mitchell, 14-1. And then Trey Ford and Vernon Adams at 20-1. Those are the quarterbacks, and this traditionally is a quarterback league. We then move down to the non-QBs, and I'll just roll out a bunch of these. We probably won't get through all of them, but Justin McInnis, outside of Brady Oliveira, the shortest number for a non-QB at 30. Tyson Philpott and Roland Milligan, 35. Milligan was, of course, in the mix late in the season last year with his amazing season on defense and special teams. DeMonte Coxey, the free agent Kadeem Carey, still available if you think he's going to be the MOP.
Sure.
Austin Mack, 40-1. Walter Fletcher, who just got cut, he's still on the board. But AJ Ouellette and Dalton Schoen, 50, 55 on Geno Lewis and Mackay Polk and Beverett. Reggie Begelton, 60. Javon Leake, 65. 70s on Samuel Emilus and James Butler. Justin Hardy, 75-1. Pimpleton and Kenny Lawler, 80-1. And then 90s on Tim White, Curly Gittins Jr., and Greg Bell. Let's head back up to the top of the quarterbacks, or let's include Brady Oliveira as a quarterback because of where he sits in the odds board. Where are you putting your nickel on the MOP for this season?
I feel like, Huss, we're going to have the same picks. I feel like we're going to have the same picks for best bet and value bet. So if we do, I think we should allow for a
Yeah, 7-1.
700. This is a guy who, again, all those things I said earlier, the training camp, we know how good he was in the 10 games in 2022. If he can get even close to that, it won't really matter. And the thing is the season of the BC Lions. Now, their defense obviously needs to be a lot better than they were last season, but this team, their success will hinge on the ability of Nathan Rourke to return as close to, or maybe even better, but definitely try to get there, the 2022 version. So in that point, that's my best bet. I'm going to allow you to do best value, and you can do your best bet. Are we on the same page for best bet? Or are you?
Actually, no. I'm out on the Lions.
Right on.
I'm out on the Lions.
Right on.
I'm not necessarily. I'm not out on Nathan Rourke. I think he's awesome, and I think he'll be there. But again, new coordinator, new head coach, new coordinator, moving on. Like, to me, the jury is really out on BC, and I think it's going to be a bit of an uphill battle for a while for him. To me, I think of this as, listen, these guys are all capable. If their teams do really well, they'll get the love. I think Montreal is the best team in the East. I think they should be the Grey Cup favorite right now. So to me, Davis Alexander, if they can win the East and they're 12-6 or 13-5 at the end of the year, and he plays the 18 games, to me, Davis Alexander is going to be the guy. I mean, Chad Kelly basically won it for being the quarterback on the best team. His numbers were nowhere close to some of the other guys. So to me, Davis Alexander is the pick at 10-1. I love the number on him. I think it's great value. But I'll be honest, Vernon Adams at 20-1 for the Calgary Stampeders. Now, do I think he's going to win it because the Calgary Stampeders are going to win the West? No. But this is the team that is by far the worst odds of any team in the Canadian Football League. If he can get this team to 9-9 or 10-8, sniff around a playoff spot, maybe get in as the third place team, it'll be because he's throwing for 400 yards a game. He's throwing touchdowns. I mean, they're not going to be winning 13-11. So I think VA is going to be given every opportunity to potentially lead the league in passing, to be honest. And listen, all those garbage time yards count when you're down in the fourth quarter and you're going out there trying to make it close.
Damn right they do.
I mean, they're not breaking down the autopsy of how you got them in week 19 or 20 when they're doing the voting.
And has Vernon Adams ever collected yards at the end of a game, Huss, in recent memory?
What? Once or twice. So
I'm with you.
20-1 on VA to me is a number that is, I think it forgets just how good he is when he's on. And I think it's a number where they have written off the Calgary Stampeders beforehand. And if you think that Calgary can be competitive this year, VA is going to be the guy that's going to get the boatload of the credit. And at 20-1, I'm going to definitely have a little sprinkle on VA.
I'm with you. That's why I felt we were going to align on the Vernon Adams for best value. Wasn't sure about Nathan Rourke or where you went. I do like your Davis Alexander pick. I think you're bang on. I think, as somebody who's who is president of the Football Reporters of Canada and oversees the voting process. When I say that, I mean I help assign the voters. I don't count the ballots. That's all done at the league office. But I do understand some of the voting tendencies, voting fatigue, what happens, the love for quarterbacks, right? It was very difficult for Brady Oliveira to take home the award last year. A lot of people, it helped him in his favor that the Hamilton Tiger Cats did not have a great season, but there are some voters out there that if it's a quarterback versus a skill player, will take the quarterback 10 times out of 10 times. But to the point about VA, Huss, is I'm with you for the exact reasons that you mentioned. This is a guy who will end up having to come back in games. He's no stranger to escaping the pocket and pushing the ball downfield. He's got an offensive line that's improved from last year and a skill set that's much better than Jake Mayers. So you got to assume that the offense is going to look better this year. And it's really going to come down to touchdowns and yards. I mean, if Vernon Adams throws for 5,500 yards, I mean, that might put him just up there, and he might have to for them to get those marks that you mentioned, 9-9 or 10-8, right? So I got Vernon Adams all day as great value. He's a guy, again, as I mentioned earlier in this pod, that he's been a perennial MOP candidate. It's all going to come down, as you can make that case for anybody, health, and I think that's the big thing about going off the board here, Huss. If you want to get into an off the board pick, if you want to make one of those deeper picks, or do you want to do something different first?
Let's do it. No, I just want to say BA's in chat. Because anyone who thinks Rourke isn't the best QB doesn't get it. Easy MOP favorite, any other piece, fool's gold bet. Here's the thing, BA. Levi Mitchell had all the numbers last year. Hamilton missed the playoffs, and they went with a running back last year. So, I mean, yes, I kind of agree with you. Like, just if all things were equal, Nathan Rourke, yeah, I'd probably give him the nod.
No one's denying he's the best. Yeah, but absolutely.
You got to think about the way the voters are working at the end of the season, and your team performance is big. Like, VA could throw for 5,500 yards. If they're 4-14 and miss the playoffs by 4 games, he's not getting the most outstanding player, even though you might think he deserves it. So I think you have to think it's a combination of individual performance, how much that player will be credited for doing it. And like Zach Caleros has an uphill. If Brady Oliveira runs for 1,500 yards and the Bombers are a great team, often it's the quarterback of the best team. That's why Chad Kelly won it earlier. So that's why I like Davis Alexander at 10-1. But the one thing, Calgary is coming from the bottom, trying to get to the top. They don't need to get there. Even an average season for Calgary would be seen as such of a win that I think VA would get a ton of credit. Before we move on, Hammer, every now and then, like last season, quarterbacks get hurt, they're up and down, and there's no obvious QB, which is where the votes usually go. Once we get past VA and we go down in the list, is there a player or two that might be worth throwing a $5 on at a big number, because there is a scenario where he is a game breaker that gets the nod and is up for the award?
So here it is, Huss. To your point, these picks, and I want to make it very, very clear, these picks are based on a year similar to last season, similar to the 2019 season when Brandon Banks won.
It's the only way it happens.
It's the only way it happens is if quarterbacks get decimated. So we're not hoping for quarterbacks being decimated, obviously, but if you want to provide a silver lining for yourself personally, if you're selfish like that and want to turn a negative into a positive, that's when you start going deep. And I got 2 guys in particular who I would take a flyer on. The first one, Huss, is Khalil Pimpleton at 8-1. You had mentioned it. Brandon Banks.
80-1.
Yeah. Sorry, 80-1. Sorry. What did I say?
8.
8-1. Oh, yeah, 80-1. Sorry. 80-1. He is a guy who, like Brandon Banks, has Tommy Condell wanting to push the ball downfield. We've seen Drew Brown, 60-something tosses in the East Final last year, 60-something attempts. This team will be throwing the ball. They will be pushing it downfield, and Khalil Pimpleton is the kind of guy who can stretch the field deep, and he's the kind of guy who can take a 10-yard pass and take it for the 80, 90 yards downfield. He's a fast guy, and he also contributes with returning in cases. So he's a guy. The other one, Huss, you got to go all the way down to the bottom. Shamar Bridges. Shamar Bridges, if you don't know Shamar Bridges, I believe he won Rookie of the Year last year. He should have won Rookie of the Year last year if he didn't, because he was absolutely on fire until he got injured at the end of the season. But this is a guy who is, he's a guy who that, with Kenny Lawler there, we've seen it in the past when Kenny Lawler's around, frees up other guys. Shamar Bridges is my guy to go deep.
It's funny, and of course Tim White's still there as well. But there's so many similarities, I think, from the offenses of Ottawa and Hamilton this year. Like with the
Levi Mitchell loves him too. Levi Mitchell loves him. Go check his socials. He loves this guy. And sorry to take away from you, Huss. This guy had 933 yards as a rookie in 15 games before he got hurt at the end. He is a target. He's a reception beast and he's a yard beast. Sorry. He would be the guy at 120-1.
I'm already on Pimpleton at 80-1 for those reasons, so I won't spend much time on that other than it's worth a bit of a flyer. You know, I will give some love to the defense. Now, listen, I think the 35-1 on Milligan is too short. Although, if he has another season like he did last year and we're in a similar situation because of how much talk he got about him last year, I think that helps him significantly, maybe as opposed to any other player.
Good
but
point.
If we're looking on the side of defense, the one player, I mean, and you could look at defensive guys. I mean, Willie Jefferson's there at 120-1. Tyrell Ford in Edmonton is 100-1. But Matthew Betts at 100-1. There is a scenario where he could not only break the sack record, but potentially smash it. That's the only scenario I can really see a defensive player winning it. I'm not sure. I may put a small piece on this. Well, Pimpleton, I think, is a realistic chance. I mean, if he goes for 2,000 yards or, 1,800, we'll be talking about him going, okay, like this guy is right there. Although, again, Drew Brown probably. But, I mean, if the quarterbacks are split over the year because of injury and his production stays at that level, we'll go on that. But I will just mention somebody from the defensive side of things in Matthew Betts, if you think that
Matthew Betts just turned 30 this year, eh?
Yeah. Well, listen,
but still got some good miles in him.
100-1. I mean, back from the NFL, full training camp right now. He's a guy that I think we should keep an eye on. Certainly, if we're talking about defensive player and those sort of things, but it takes a lot to get into the conversation from a defensive side of the football. If you have a historic number of sacks, that's a potential to do it. All right, so there's our MOP over at CoolBet. Check the entire list. There might be a player that you're high on that's there that we didn't mention. But Hammer, I want to talk. Let's get to season totals first, and then we'll get to a couple of our favorite player props. Here are the season totals right now at CoolBet. BC over under 9.5. Hamilton 8.5. The Riders 10. Elks 8.5, Ottawa 10, Bombers 10. Calgary is actually up to 7. Calgary was 6.5 for a good portion of this offseason. 7, yeah. And now they're at 7. The Alouettes are at 10.5. The Argos are at 11.5. Let's bang out our favorite 2 picks. Can we say? You can take 2 overs if you want. You can take 2 unders. I think I'm locking in on 1 over and 1 under. Where do you want to start?
I came with 3, but I'll give you 2. I'm going to start with the Stampeders. I'm going to start with them over. Look, Dave Dickinson is a very proud coach. He had a very, very long record of making the playoffs, both as a player and then coach and GM. That ended last season. They went 6-12 again, like lost twice as many games as they lost or as they won. And this is just too proud of an organization. And this is why I'm betting. This is why I would bet on this Huss. I'm not asking them to even get to 500. You're asking them to get a game under 500. So if they can improve this year with, let's call it the Vernon Adams effect, I think they're in a good position to go over the 7. I'm fine with a push at 7, over 7 for Calgary. The other one I have is I'm between 2, but I'm going to go with the same thing. I'm going to go with the Ticats, 8.5. I'm going over. I like, again, same logic to a certain degree. We're not, no one's asking them to lead the East. No one's asking them to be dominant. This total is asking them to be 500. And so in that case, I think it's a good bet. I think that Ottawa is exciting. Montreal is probably going to be the best team, but lots of things can happen. Injuries can happen. And all of a sudden you start looking at the low total teams. They all of a sudden look a lot better. The other one I have, I'll just make it quickly. I had the Bombers. I put them over 10 because the Bombers win, and it's Grey Cup year. That's it for me.
Yeah, I kind of like the Bombers too at that 10. I would have loved it at 9.5, but and I think just all these numbers, the one thing it tells you is what we've been talking about. Just the level of perceived parity around the league going into this season is as close as it's been in a really long time, and the fact that the one line movement we've had has been the lowest team moving up tells you, I think, all you need to know. about. I mean, a 9-9 season is 500, and every single team in the league is between 2 games under and 2 games over 500, and that is a great thing for the Canadian Football League heading in. I'm going to take the Alouettes over 10.5, especially at plus money, even money at 100. I mean, I think you're good enough to win 11, 12, maybe 13 games. We talked about Davis Alexander, the weapons that they put together. The Argos, who I think, first of all, they got a head-to-head matchup in week 1 at home, which I think is a big advantage for Montreal. So I'm going to take Montreal at 10.5.
Might have that by Labor Day.
I mean, we will see. Again, listen, there's a lot of other good teams, but I mean, I just think that based on everything that we know, and again, if something happens to Davis Alexander, I've got a lot of confidence. I may be higher on MBT than a lot of others are, but I think he can certainly get the job done in a backup role. Looking at, there's 2 teams in the West that, to be honest, I think maybe we're being a little, maybe a little too high on too early. Edmonton and BC, they're playing each other this week, but again, first-year head coaches, I think that there's a big job ahead of Buck Pierce coming up in BC, and it's the losses elsewhere. He's got the quarterback, absolutely. They've got some weapons. But to me, I mean, they are going to have a real tough time getting over 500 right now in a division where there is absolutely no gimmies, and there's no gimmies on the other side of the schedule as well. I'll make an argument for the Elks as well at under 8.5. Like, listen, I think Trey Ford's exciting. I love to watch him play. The big question for me is, can he be a guy that consistently wins you football games as opposed to getting on the highlight reel with a couple great plays a night, but maybe a couple other decisions that end up coming back the other way. So I think between the 2 of these, I'll go Edmonton under 8.5. But to be honest, I think I'm leading under on both of them right now. All your win totals, got to get them in before kickoff. So those are all there waiting for you as well. Now, the one thing that we haven't done is jumped on a couple of our favorite player props. And again, you're going to have to go to CoolBet, click on CFL Futures to see everything available. Couple notable ones from, like, for instance, just to put into perspective, if you don't have it in front of you, Bo Levi led the league in passing last year. His total is 45.75.5. Nathan Rourke's passing total is 4,300. Brady Oliveira on a rushing side, 1,250. I know you've been digging through this, Hammer. If you're putting a couple player props down, what are your favorites for the upcoming season?
I'm going quarterbacks here. I don't love to play season-long props. I don't want to say as a rule, but the other thing too, with you got to take into consideration, you got to pick durable players, right? You got to factor in who you think has competition, right? So who might be pulled, and so when I factor those in, Huss, I think it's pretty easy for me. I just think Drew Brown is going to throw the lights out this year. I'm not worried about William Stanback being there. I think that William Stanback is a great player. I just don't think that he's a guy that's going to be all that, relied upon or is going to be leaned on for the run game as he gets older. He's a reliable guy. I just don't think I think we're looking at a very much passing attack in Ottawa. So when I look at Drew Brown's 43.50, I look at a guy who is going to be averaging 300 yards passing a game. So I see him being very, very much in that, above that, over that, and I'm also looking at 4,300 passing yards for Nathan Rourke. I know I questioned his receivers, but he has a better O-line, an improved O-line. I do think he's an incredibly talented player. I think he's an incredibly prepared player, and I don't think, regardless of BC's win-loss record, that it's going to affect Nathan Rourke's passing yards. So he would be another guy I would have, and I look at that, and I'm not going to make a decision on it, Huss. I'll toss to you because I've given you my 2 picks. But I look at guys like Trey Ford. I look at guys like Trevor Harris. Trevor Harris is injury prone, and he's up against another battered O-line. That's probably why he's at 4,000 passing yards. But I just, I'm not hoping injury on anybody, but if anyone was to get injured, it's likely going to be Trevor Harris. Trey Ford is another guy. Again, I'm not, as another guy who I think when you look at his game, when you look at the potential, the things that you just said, the potential to get replaced with Cody Fajardo behind him, I just think he's going to have a big spotlight on him, a lot of pressure on him. I'm not sure about him either. But
yeah,
I'm not
gonna the one thing I'll say, and I did this in the lock shop, just it was like almost a test. If you blindly bet unders, blindly bet season unders, just literally can take under. Injuries to the players that you've selected will hit 2 or 3 of those bets on their own. So the durability point you make, if you're looking for overs, is absolutely crucial. And by the same token, you might see a number that looks really good, but if you can't count on the guy to get out there for 17 or 18 games, it can be a very, very dangerous bet. Which actually, this is going to be a hilarious segue into picking a guy that in the past has had injury issues, and I'm going to take his over for the year. I'm going to go to receiving. Okay. And I'm going to go to Nick Dembski here in Winnipeg. Dembski's total for the year is 975.5. Now, Dembski's gone over 1,000 in both of the last 2 years. And in last year's campaign, he played all 18 games. He was in 16 the year before. Now, part of it is that I think Nick, as a veteran, knows more about his body and what he needs to do to be ready to go. I think he's also going to be, like, at times, I think he was the victim of too many receivers in and around. And obviously they were trying to get it to Kenny Lawler. Like, with Lawler being gone this year, Dalton Schoen will be back, and that to me kind of replaces Kenny Lawler. Maybe the volume of balls will go there to Dalton, but I think also his route running ability is going to add Dembski even more opportunity to be a difference maker out of the slot, to see a lot of balls. And the one thing we know, there's a lot of confidence in Dembski and comfort from Zach Caleros throwing to him. So I'm looking for another 1,000-yard season for Nick Dembski. I'm going to take him over 9.5. I did contemplate an under on Brady Oliveira's total. 1,250 is a massive number for running backs. But then you look at what he's done the last 2 seasons for 1,300, 1,500 yards, and seemingly always there for the Bombers. And listen, as a fan of Brady, I wasn't about to do him like that on the show. So I will step back from that.
And the other thing about Brady, even though he's banged up right now, he was banged up at the start of last year and still ran away with it, right? So like he wasn't too, he missed
far more of an issue last year.
Way bigger issue. But he missed all of game 2. So like there, you can't look at that and be like, oh, he's probably not going to rip off. Because to your point, with Lawler gone, they might lean on him even more, right? Like it might lean on. We'll see though.
The under on a quarterback that I'll take is Trevor Harris for exactly the reason you have.
Totally. I was hoping you would say that.
If he plays 18 games, he might win MOP. We'll see whether that can happen, especially at his age. And I think they feel like they've got Jake Mayer, and they're going to want to have him ready for the playoffs because I think Saskatchewan's going to be a playoff team. I think that if they're in doubt, they'll, as long as they're not playing for their lives, I think they always err on the side of caution. I think that's part of the reason why they brought Mayer in. We've talked a lot about Pimpleton, though. His total is 1150. And again, this is all about durability and the ability to play the 18 games. But if he plays 18 games, I with Tommy Condell there and Brown, I don't know how he doesn't, probably scratch 1,500 yards, never mind 1150. So Pimpleton and Dembski. And
those guys are always durable. That guy can take a beating.
Well, because
he's a returner too. Like he's kind of like, he's the guy who's young enough and takes a beating and gets back up and going, right?
And of course, and then Trevor Harris under 4,000 yards. And that's sort of a bet on him maybe playing 14, 15 games as opposed to the full complement of 18 games. All right, before we go, let's get back to this week's games. We'll have a running total all year long of it. Ottawa and Saskatchewan, Sask -3. Hammer, who you got?
I'm taking the Red Blacks. I'm doing it. I just think that Three's too many points for the home side and a banged up O-line. Ottawa's going to want to get things going. I'm picking them.
Yeah, I don't know. Listen, I don't feel great about anything in week one, just because how many times have we made bets in week one and going, what the hell were we thinking afterwards?
We should honestly make that a firm statement, Hust. Week one and picking in the CFL is an absolute crapshoot. Do not get horny off your picks and go to the bank and spend a bunch, because there will be a lot of surprises in week one.
I will take the Riders, though. Like I said, I got in on them at -2.5. It's now -3, -114, but for the sake of the picks, I will stay with that. Now, Montreal and Toronto. Montreal is -4. We kind of went through over this, but I think we're both on the Montreal side of this, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't love that extra point, but I'm Montreal. Yeah, absolutely.
Hamilton and Calgary. Again, earlier today, this was a pick 'em at -110. It still basically is. So let's just play this one as it is. Win or lose, I'm on with the Ticats.
I'm doubled up. We're doubled up on that. So there's not going to be much. What you took? Did you take Sask or Ottawa?
I took Sask. Sask.
Okay, so we do have one different thing. So there will be a difference in records by the end of the week.
Edmonton, BC, 5.5 is the spread for BC at home. Edmonton getting 5.5. I'll go first on this one. I'm not particularly high on either of these teams. I think that's probably clear from what we've talked about for the last hour. Listen, if you're asking me who's going to probably win, I'll say probably BC. But man, -5.5, the 5.5 points to me is just a lot. And I know that Edmonton's going to come in there. I think they'll be hyped up with their new head coach. And I think Buck Pierce is going to be in a lot of pressure in that first game. And like a lot of things, it'll take a little while to get together. So granted, lots of unknowns on either side of this, but I'm going to take the points with take the points with Edmonton plus 5.5.
Full transparency, it's bouncing back in my head as you speak. I've committed to both sides throughout your conversation. I'm going to go with the team who gets the points. I am going to go with Edmonton too. I want them. I think that matters. 5.5 is just. And here's the other thing, you savvy CFL bettors out there. Lots can change at the end of a game, right? You could see Hamilton trailing by 15 or 10 or 12 points, and then they march down the field and score a touchdown because the other team isn't really trying. Those things happen a lot, and they cover. So points really do matter. I'm nervous about this one. I don't love it because I do think that BC could take advantage of Snoop Dogg in week one. And Nathan Rourke return and all that being in BC place and the time change and all that stuff. And again, week one is a crapshoot. It really is. But I'm still feeling like because BC's a little unproven still, because there's a lot of moving pieces, because their defense isn't as strong as others in the league, I think Trey Ford will be able to do some of his, creative ways, in extending plays. So I like the Elks.
Well, and you know what I mean? Listen, this is as much a bet on that Edmonton defense. Like I think it's
absolutely
much easier to have a defense operating at a high level than an offense that's putting a lot of new pieces in. And you brought in Ford, all those dudes on the line from the Toronto Argonauts. I like them. So listen, this is actually perfect. We can put together. We've got three picks together. So we'll just leave the Ottawa-Saskatchewan game, and I'll get Jake to throw up. We'll move it to 3.5 just because you can't have a push in one of the combo cards. So we'll go Montreal -3.5, Hamilton to win, or actually we'll take Hamilton plus 0.5 point. So if by some reason it ends up being a tie, we'll get the win on that one. And we'll take Edmonton at 5.5, and Jake will get a nice boost, and we'll stick that up in the combo cards over at Coolbet. So we'll see what happens in game number one, but if things go our way, we could catch a ticket and both be in the plus after week one of the picks.
And not to get too degenerate gambling right now, Huss, but another advice, live betting. Live betting in the CFL is
we're going to do Hammers live betting every week.
Yeah.
In fact, I would like a live bet tail. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not good. But Jeff,
sometimes they're great, sometimes you just don't talk about
masterful at that last year. So we will get to all of that. Actually, let's get Remus in here for one moment. Remo, I don't know whether you want to come on camera, just turn your mic on, but do you have a pick in Ottawa, Saskatchewan -3, and what do you think about the other games? Are you against us on any of the other picks? Okay. Hey, everyone, can you hear Remus?
Oh, we could hear him. We could hear him, but they couldn't. So it was just.
I love it. You're
dead
back.
air.
Start off again.
Don't worry, he didn't say anything really good anyway. So
your home team thoughts.
Yeah, I was just saying I'm back on now. So I was just saying home. I like the home teams here. Saskatchewan, Montreal. I like BC. Saturday night, Nathan Rourke at home against Edmonton. Absolutely. But I will go Hamilton and Calgary. Bo Levi revenge.
Excellent. All right. Well, we'll grab our picks in, and we'll have a fun little season-long competition. We'll have to see. Well, I'll text Connor. We'll get his picks as well, and then we'll roll them out on CFL 110 throughout the year. So there you have it. The combo, which we'll put up after a boost: Montreal -3.5, Hamilton +0.5, Edmonton +5.5. And again, we're on the other sides of this Ottawa-Saskatchewan game on the weekend. Hammer, great stuff. Well, for everyone in the middle of the country in Winnipeg, we'll kick back, watch the action on TSN, and then look forward to welcoming in the BC Lions for what should be a big night next Thursday at Princess Auto Stadium. But in the meantime, a bit longer than we'll normally go, but hey, we had a lot of season futures to get to. Totally. A lot of fun, and now it's just time to get our tickets, kick back, and watch 4 great CFL games this week before we get some live action here at Princess Auto Stadium, the home of the Grey Cup. Absolutely. You know what? It's the best. It's the best league in the world for a reason. It's the most craziest, chaotic, ridiculous, drama-filled, jam-packed, exciting. I can't wait to see how this unfolds. I can't wait to see how our predictions fare week to week. I can't wait to see at the end of the season, when all is said and done, how dumb we looked in in episode 2, week 1 of our second season of CFL 110. But you know what? I'm looking forward to it every step of the way. So really appreciate being on here. Really appreciate everybody who tunes in and listens to us. We're on every week. We break it down. We both know the league like the back of our hands. We will give you the goods, behind the scenes stuff, all that stuff. And we'll, try to direct you in the right way as far as gambling goes. But certainly appreciate you being on here. Like everybody else, I think I know a lot more next week after we actually see some games this week. And it might take a week to know about the Bombers, who've got a new look. Obviously, we'll hit them next week as well. Huge thanks to our partners at CoolBet. You can get over there. Everything we just talked about with the season futures will be there up until Thursday night for season kickoff. The player props, obviously the MOP awards, and all that fun stuff. But in the meantime, we got 4 games beginning Thursday night in Saskatchewan, finishing up with a doubleheader on Saturday, Calgary at 6 o'clock, and then the BC Edmonton game at 9. The CFL is back, and we're back, folks. Cannot wait for it. Check out coolbet.com for all those notes, and you can use promo code WST if you haven't made a deposit there before for that 100% bonus up to $200. Hammer, have a great one. Congrats again on the award, and I'll look forward to doing this together with you again next week as we get ready for the Bomber home opener and week 2 in the CFL. Looking forward to it, man. Let's do it all over again this time next week. Thanks to Michael Remus and everyone that joined us live. Tell a friend about CFL 110 Tuesdays right here all season long on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
You've been listening to CFL 110. Tune in next week for more great Canadian football discussion.